Good morning. How's everyone doing? So we're talking about hacking sex ed or hacking sexual health. Really, this hour is going to be kind of like storytelling hour. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the things that I've done and seen and kind of where I've been as a way of just opening this conversation about what are we all going to do to find workarounds, to continue to find workarounds, many of us are already leveraging. A little bit background on my work. So as was mentioned, I work at the United Nations for about 11 years. That's me posing for a photo. Work at MTV, or have worked at MTV for maybe 6 years or so. Also posing for my headshot. In addition, as we said, I've done this now for, I think, 9, maybe going on 10 years next year. Free advice, so I go out and I put my little chair in a sign that says free advice, relationships, sex, and dating out on the streets of New York. And people just come up alone. Parents bring their children, children bring their parents. And it's a big sort of party to talk about whatever's on their mind. And more on this and more some of these other things later. I just joined Planned Parenthood of New York City as, woohoo, Planned Parenthood! As Vice President of Education and Training, so I get to oversee the amazing projects that we're working on, that we're going to further, and I'll mention a couple of those later on as well. So I give all that little background on myself to say that I have, like many of us in this room, I'm not an expert or not the expert certainly on this, but I have navigated lots of hacks, and hacks look different, right? Hacks on the street look different, very different from hacks on television to hacks at the United Nations, for example. Sometimes we hear hack and it feels like it's something, a stretch, right? And in fact it is, or at least it should be. But it starts with something that we're already doing, or really the instinct that we already have to do the right thing. It really feels clearer now more than ever that the attacks on us, on people like us, on people like me, on people not like me, on trans folks, on immigrants certainly, on people of color, the same communities that we've unfortunately seen disparaged and ignored or pushed down are in some ways, there's more awareness, more activism that's happening, and at the same time, there's more uncertainty. And uncertainty mixed with potentially less funding equals need for creativity. The reason I have this car here is to actually remind myself of something that I did years ago, actually when I was working at a Planned Parenthood affiliate. This is maybe almost 20 years ago. I was teaching sex ed in schools and wasn't able to really, show much or talk a lot about condoms. Certainly wasn't able to talk anything about sort of distribution of them. That was not allowed. But my affiliate, we were getting really frustrated, and we were trying to find a way to sort of get around that, if at all possible. So the hack that we sort of invented, I would go, with obviously the approval of the affiliate, I would go into the classroom, do my week of sex ed, and then on Fridays I'd say, well, it's been a great week. Thanks for being here. Hope you have a lovely weekend. Can't obviously give you any more information on the condoms that we were just talking about. However, if you happen to walk out of here and turn left, and you're walking home by the Dairy Queen, and you see a car with the windows down and some Tupac playing, and you see maybe a sign that says like a poster on the hood that says free condoms, like that might be me, and maybe I have free condoms. Whoa, oh man. Sometimes you're opening doors. Whoa, get with it. So this is one of the places I worked at for a while. This is our UN base, our compound in Kabul, Afghanistan. This is the entrance to it. It's quite difficult to get in. There's a lot of checkpoints. We started off working with our UN staff exclusively on issues around sexual health and HIV. As time went on, we thought, well, we have these resources, we have these folks coming in from different parts of the world to support this whole project. Is there some way that we can expand it? And so with their ideas, we then expanded it to actually civilians who were not UN affiliated. We really literally opened our doors. We found a way for them to actually through that checkpoint and opened it up specifically to people who were working in the prison system. And so that's what you see here. You see a mix here of people who are UN employees and people who are not at all UN affiliated, who had no experience with the UN whatsoever, and who we, after sort of a lot of work, we were able to actually bring them in. And then later actually expanded that to bring in family members as well, and family members of people who were maybe even in prisons as well. So it was quite the experience, and none of it, I take none of the credit. It was really the folks on the ground here who thought, let's really literally open our doors. This is a carne asada, and this, my dear colleagues, was my in years ago when I was doing, working with the March of Dimes to do education for migrant folks. So we were trying to do some program where we had, we did education essentially to migrant women and ultimately their families around reproductive and reproductive health and sexual health. But we were having a hard time going into the migrant camps and actually doing this work. So after many months of sort of, events that were scheduled where no one showed up, and it was literally me and my colleague just sitting around with the, demonstrators and old diaphragms, et cetera. I said, let's mix it up. So indeed we did, and we had and went to carne asadas. So on Sundays, we found out that the folks had carne asada, which is Spanish for like grilled meat. So we went to these places, and people were generally super friendly. And we started the conversation there. It was our way of sort of building trust, which to me was honestly a little surprising that there was that much of a leap. My background is that my family, grew up, homeless, working in the same, sort of alongside the same migrants in California. I was 5 selling corn on the side of the freeway. So, and speaking Spanish, so I felt like sort of these, in some way, were, that had some proximity or some familiarity, certainly, with this migrant camp in particular. But still, I was an outsider, and that was very clear. So the olive branch, the kind of starting that communication of that, I'm here, I just want to hang out, I want to get to know you, was an opportunity to spark conversations. So, we'd be there having our meet, and I'd be like, what goes really great with carne asada? Some reproductive rights. And from there, we moved on. So how would somebody maybe define sex negativity if you had to? Shame, pregnancy bashing, fear, judgment, slut shaming, scare tactics. Okay, we are on a roll. I love it. Well, don't love it, because these are all things that we don't like. One of the reasons that I'm giving this talk and really talking about my experience is because I like to talk about the things that I really personally know for myself, right? And I think that the more times that you give people that opportunity to do so, the richer all of our lives become, especially in the realm of sexual health where a lot of this doesn't get discussed. There's probably, honestly, 100 reasons why I do this. One is that I got tired of having conversations with people in different contexts where I had a goal or objective in mind. Where you say, okay, great, well, thanks for coming. Let's get to the real reason of the hour that you're here. So I thought, what happens if we sit back a little bit and sit back a little bit more and just let that conversation just happen and flow wherever it needs to go? It's just an opportunity, something that people can engage with on their own terms, right? And my sort of task or question to all of us is how do we let people engage with us on their own terms? If we know instinctively either the right thing to do, or we have an instinct, we don't know what the right thing to do is, but we know sort of maybe the right outcomes or the preferred outcomes, or we don't know, but we just have an instinct to be helpful and to really push ourselves to find new solutions to tricky problems, then together we all win. So thank you.